I rushed to tell my parents about my new job, my heart full of excitement. But they only asked how much the salary was compared to others, hurt, and that was the day I learned dreams lose their shine when they are measured only in numbers. I was sitting in my car outside Target when I sent the text that would destroy my miss too. 3 words, 1 emoji, 7 years of marriage gone. Let me back. My name is Sarah, I'm 32, and until 3 months ago, I thought I was happily married to my college sweetheart David. We had twin girls Emma and Sophie who just turned 6, the kind of everyone says they want, but I was so tired. God, I was exhausted in ways that sleep couldn't fix. David worked 60-hour weeks at his accounting firm. I juggled part-time marketing work from home while managing everything else. School pickup, grocery runs, bedtime stories, laundry mountains that never seemed to shrink. When David came home, he'd collapse on the couch, scroll his phone, and ask what was for dinner. I felt invisible in my own. That's when Marcus started commenting on my Instagram posts. It began innocently enough. I'd post pictures of my morning coffee or some marketing project I'm proud of, and there he'd be, looking amazing as always. Or, creativity is incredible. Marcus was this guy I'd known in high school. Not well, just aware of each other. He'd moved back to town recently, divorced, working as a personal trainer. Every photo he posted showed him hiking or at the gym, looking like he'd walked out of a fitness magazine. The attention felt like oxygen to someone drowning. When David forgot our anniversary dinner because of a client emergency, I posted a sad selfie with my untouched plate at the restaurant. Marcus was the first to comment, deserves so much better. I should have ignored it. Instead I DM'd him, thanks, bad day. He responded immediately, want to talk about it. 3 hours. We talked for 3 hours that night. About dreams, about feeling stuck, about that ache of wondering if this was all there was to. He listened in ways David hadn't in years. Asked questions about my thoughts, not just my schedule. We're incredible, Sarah. Don't let anyone forget that. I screenshotted that message and stared at it for way too long. The texting became daily. Good morning messages that made me smile before coffee. Funny memes that actually made me laugh. Late night conversations when David was snoring beside me and I felt more connected to the man on my phone than my own husband. Marcus never pushed for more. He was just there. Present in ways that filled all the empty spaces David had stopped noticing. I keep thinking about, he texted one Tuesday. I stared at that message for 20 minutes before responding, me too. The line was crossed. We both knew it. When he suggested meeting for coffee, just as friends, I said yes without hesitation. I told David I was meeting my college roommate Lisa. The lie came so easily it scared me. Marcus looked even better in person. He smelled like cologne and possibility. We sat in this little cafe downtown, and when he reached across the table to touch my hand while I was talking about feeling trapped, I didn't pull away. You're beautiful when passionate about something, he said. No one had called me beautiful in months. That first coffee turned into lunch the next week. Lunch became drinks. Drinks became the moment I was sitting in his car in the parking lot behind the restaurant and he leaned over to me. I him back. The guilt hit immediately, sharp and nauseating, but underneath it was this electric feeling I'd forgotten existed. The thrill of being wanted, of being someone's first choice instead of their afterthought. I should go, I whispered against his lips. Should, he agreed, but neither of us moved. We made out like teenagers for 20 minutes. When I finally drove home, my lips were swollen and my heart was racing. David was watching TV, didn't even look when I walked in. How was Lisa? He asked absently. Good, I lied and went to check on the girls. Emma was sprawled across her bed clutching her stuffed elephant. Sophie had kicked off her covers and was curled in a tiny ball. They looked so innocent, so trusting. My throat closed. What was I doing? But when Marcus texted that night. Can't stop thinking about today. I was already planning when I could see him again. The next 3 weeks were a blur of stolen moments and elaborate lies. Coffee dates became afternoon meetups at his apartment while the girls were at school. I told we were just talking, just connecting as friends. That was another lie. When he started kissing my neck that Tuesday afternoon on his couch, I didn't stop him. When his hands found the hem of my sweater, I helped him lift it over my head. When he whispered, "Are sure?" I nodded yes even though every alarm bell in my head was screaming no. I betrayed everything that mattered to me in broad daylight on a stranger's couch while my daughters were at school learning about honesty and making good choices. The worst part, it felt amazing. For 43 minutes, I wasn't tired or invisible or taken for granted. I was desired and alive and free. Then I was driving home with Marcus still on my skin, already composing lies about where I'd been. David was in the kitchen making the girls sandwiches when I walked in. Peanut butter and jelly, diagonally the way Sophie liked. He looked and smiled. Good meeting today. Yeah, really productive, I said, walking straight past him to the bathroom where I scrubbed my hands until they were raw. In the mirror, I looked exactly the same. Same brown hair, same tired eyes, same wedding ring. But everything was different now. I was different. I was a cheater. That night David actually initiated intimacy for the first time in months. As he me, all I could think about was Marcus. I faked everything. The sounds, the movements, the caring. Even my was a lie. Afterwards David rolled over and immediately fell asleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, disgusted with but already planning the next time I'd see Marcus. The text that started this whole confession, that came 3 days later. Marcus had sent, missing already, can't wait to see Friday. I was supposed to respond with something safe, something that maintained plausible deniability. Instead, sitting in that Target parking lot with my daughter's Christmas presents in my trunk, I sent back those 3 words that would unravel everything. Miss too. Because David checks our phone bill every month. Because he noticed I was texting someone new. Because he saw that emoji and asked to see my phone. Because I was too careless and too high on attention to protect the people I claimed to love most. Who was Marcus? David asked that night holding my phone. My mouth went dry. Just a friend from high school. Friends from high school send emojis. The disappointment in his voice was worse than anger would have been. I'd heard him frustrated, stressed, tired, but never disappointed in me. Not like this. I could have lied again. Kirk could have claimed it was innocent, platonic, a misunderstanding. But looking at my husband's face, the man who'd held my hair when morning sickness nearly killed me, who'd cried when the girls took their first steps, who'd never once made me doubt he loved me, I couldn't find another lie. I messed, I whispered. How much did mess, Sarah? And that's when I realized that the worst part wasn't going to be losing David. It was going to be watching him realize he'd married someone who could do this to the people she loved most. David didn't yell. I was prepared for screaming, for him to throw things, for the explosive anger I probably deserved. Instead, he just sat on our bed holding my phone, staring at the messages I'd been too careless to delete. The silence was unbearable. How long? He finally asked, his voice so quiet I had to strain to hear it. 6 weeks. How many times? David, please. How many times did sleep with him, Sarah? The clinical way he said it made my stomach turn. Twice. That was a lie. It was 4 times, but I couldn't say that number out loud, as if minimizing it somehow mattered now. He scrolled through more messages. I watched his face change as he read things I'd written. Things like, I think about constantly, and David will be at work until 8, we could have the whole afternoon, planned this, he said, more to himself than to me. These aren't mistakes. Planned when to see him. Chose restaurants where no one would know. Made sure the girls wouldn't be home. He looked at me then and I saw something in his eyes. The trust, the certainty that I was safe, that we were solid. Gone. The girls, he whispered, did this while our daughters were at school. That's when he started crying. David crying was worse than any screaming match could have been. He covered his face with his hands and his shoulders shook, and I realized I'd never seen my husband cry like this. Not when his dad died, not when we lost the pregnancy between the twins, and when we thought we might not be able to have kids. I reached for him instinctively, the same way I'd comforted him through every other crisis in 7 years. He flinched away from my touch like I was poisonous. Don't, he said through his hands. Please don't touch me right now. We sat there in our bedroom. The room where we'd brought the girls to snuggle on weekend mornings, where we'd whispered about dreams and plans and growing old together. And I watched everything we'd built crumble. I need to leave, he said finally. David, we need to talk about this. No, his voice was firm now, controlled. I need to pack a bag and leave tonight. I need time to think without here. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know. Call sister. Go to a hotel. I don't care. But can't be here right now. The girls were asleep down the hall. It was 9:47 p.m. on a Thursday. I had nowhere to go and no explanation for why mommy was suddenly leaving. What do I tell Emma and Sophie? I'll handle it. David, they're my daughters too. Are they? The venom in his voice made me step back. Because a mother who loved her daughters wouldn't risk destroying their family for some guy she barely knows. He was right. I had no defense for that. I packed mechanically. Underwear, work clothes, pajamas, toiletries. David sat in the living room with his head in his hands while I moved around our house like a ghost. 7 years of marriage, and I was leaving with a single suitcase. Before I walked out, I stopped at the girls' bedroom door. Emma was snoring softly, sprawled across her bed like a starfish. Sophie had found her way under the covers, curled with her stuffed bunny. They had no idea their world was about to. I drove to my sister Amy's house across town, called from her driveway at 11 p.m. She answered on the second ring, already alert. Sarah, what's wrong? I need somewhere to stay tonight. Are okay? Are the girls okay? The girls are fine. I messed Amy. Really badly. She didn't ask questions, just opened her door and made the couch. Heard, but I could see the worry in her face, the way she kept looking at my wedding ring like she was trying to piece together what could send me here in the middle of the night. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw David's face when he realized what I'd done. I kept checking my phone, hoping for a text from him, some sign that we could work through this. Nothing. At 6:30 a.m., my phone rang. David, the girls want to know where are. I could hear them in the background, their morning voices asking questions. Where's mommy? Why isn't she making breakfast? Is she sick? What did tell them? That had to go help Aunt Amy with something. I'll talk to them later. Can I? No, not yet. I'm taking them to school, then I'm calling a lawyer. The line went dead. A lawyer. He was already thinking about lawyers. Amy emerged from her bedroom, took one look at my face, and put coffee in front of me without a word. She'd always been the steady one, the sister who made sensible choices and never needed rescuing. Want to talk about it? She asked gently. I told her everything. Watching her expression change from concern to disbelief to disappointment was like watching in a mirror. Amy had loved David since college, always said he was perfect for me. Sarah, what we're thinking? I wasn't. That's the problem. How could risk everything for some guy barely know? The same question David had asked, the same question I'd been asking. But sitting in Amy's kitchen, trying to explain the inexplicable, I realized I'd been asking the wrong question. The question wasn't how I could risk everything for Marcus. The question was how I could risk everything for so little. Because that's what Marcus was, wasn't it? A fantasy. A escape from responsibility and real. A man who knew nothing about my actual struggles, who'd never seen me at 3 a.m. with a sick child or stressed about bills or too exhausted for anything but collapse. He'd been in love with the version of me that existed for 2-hour coffee dates. The woman who had time for long conversations and flirty texts, who could pretend her biggest problem was feeling underappreciated instead of the crushing weight of keeping a family together. David knew all of me. The crying, the morning break, the days I was too overwhelmed to be kind. He'd loved me through postpartum depression and career anxiety and the time I accidentally dyed all his work shirts pink. He'd chosen me every day for 7 years, even when I was difficult to choose, and I'd thrown that away for someone who didn't even know my middle name. By noon, the humiliation was spreading beyond our house. Amy's neighbor asked if I was okay, said she'd heard David took the girls to school alone looking really upset. Small town, people notice when routines change. Then my mom called. David called me, she said without preamble. He asked if I could watch the girls this weekend because two are working through some things. What did do, Sarah? My mother had never liked conflict, never wanted to hear about problems she couldn't fix. But she'd loved David from day one, always said I was lucky to find someone so steady. I couldn't tell her. Couldn't say the words out loud to my mother, who'd raised me to believe marriage was sacred, that worked through problems instead of running from them. I made some mistakes, Mom. What kind of mistakes? The kind that might end my marriage. The sharp intake of breath, then silence. When she spoke again, her voice was cold. I'll take the girls. But Sarah, if I've done what I think done, I'm very disappointed in. Even my mother knew. Without details, without explanation, she knew. By Friday afternoon it was all over social media. Not the specifics but enough. Marcus had posted a gym selfie with the caption, "Some things aren't meant to be," and tagged our location. 3 mutual friends from high school commented asking what happened. Someone screenshotted it and posted it in our neighborhood Facebook group with, "Anyone know what's going on with Sarah and David? Saw this and now she's been staying at her sister's." I wanted to disappear. Delete every social media account, change my name, move to another state where no one knew me as the woman who'd destroyed her perfect family for a personal trainer she barely knew. But the worst was yet to come. Saturday morning, Emma called me from my mother's house. "Mummy, wire at Aunt Amy's. Daddy said had to help her, but she's here with us. Are and Daddy fighting, 6 years old. Too smart for the lies we were telling, too young to understand the truth. Daddy and I are working through some grown problems. Are getting divorced like Chloe's parents." The word hit like a physical divorce. My 6-year-old knew that word, understood it as a possibility for us now. "I hope not, sweetheart. I love and Sophie so much." "Then why don't come home?" "Because home didn't want me anymore. Because I'd traded my place there for stolen afternoons with someone who disappeared the moment things got complicated. Because I'd chosen temporary excitement over permanent love and now I was living with the consequences. Soon, I lied to my daughter. I'll come home soon. But even as I said it, I knew it might not be true. That night David texted me, "We need to talk. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., after the girls go back to Mom's, meet me at the house. Our house. The place I used to belong." I spent Sunday morning throwing from nerves, trying on different outfits like clothes could somehow undo what I'd done. Like the right sweater could make me look like someone worth forgiving. When I pulled into our driveway, David's car was there but the house felt empty. No bikes in the yard, no chalk drawings on the sidewalk, just silence. He opened the door before I knocked. He looked terrible, unshaven, eyes red, like he'd been crying or not sleeping or both. "Come in," he said formally, like I was a stranger. We sat in our living room on the couch where we used to watch movies and plan vacations and dream about the future. Now there was 3 feet of space between us that felt like a canyon. "I've been thinking," he said, "and I need to understand something. Was this about me? About us? Or was this just about wanting something different?" The question I'd been dreading, because the answer made everything worse. "It wasn't about," I whispered. "Didn't do anything wrong. Then why, Sarah? Why would risk everything we built if it wasn't because I failed somehow?" And that's when I realized the cruelest part of what I'd done. Heard if David had been a bad husband, if he'd been or neglectful or unfaithful himself, there would have been a reason, a justification, something that made sense. But he hadn't been. He'd been tired and distracted and imperfect in the way everyone is imperfect. He'd worked long hours to provide for us and sometimes forgot to put dishes in the dishwasher. He'd fallen asleep during movies and been too exhausted for intimacy as often as I was. He'd been human, and I destroyed our family because human wasn't exciting enough. I felt invisible. I said finally. I felt like I was disappearing into being a mom and a wife and I forgot who I was before all that. So decided to find out by sleeping with someone else. The flat way he said it made me flinch. But he wasn't wrong. "Sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry. Sorry did it or sorry got caught, both," I admitted, because more lies wouldn't help anyone now. He nodded like he'd expected that answer. "I can't trust anymore," he said simply. "Every time leave the house, heard, every time we're on phone, every time Sarah's somewhere, I'm gonna wonder if we're lying. I can't live like that. We could try counseling." Sarah didn't have an affair, had a whole separate, planned dates with him while making dinner for our children. Lied to my face every single day for 6 weeks. This wasn't a mistake, it was a choice made over and over again. He was right. I'd chosen Marcus every time I texted him back, every time I met him, every time I him. I'd chosen him over David, over the girls, over everything that was supposed to matter most. "So what happens now?" I asked. "Now we figure out how to tell our daughters that mommy and daddy aren't going to be married anymore." The finality of it hit like a sledgehammer. Not, "We'll see if we can work this out," or, "Maybe with time," just the cold reality that it was over. "David, please." "No," he said firmly. I loved Sarah. I loved completely and faithfully for 7 years, and that away for someone barely know. There's no coming back from that. I wanted to argue, to for us, to promise I'd never do anything like this again. But looking at his face, I realized something devastating. I didn't deserve to come back from this. The woman who could plan secret dates while her husband worked to support their family, who could lie to her children about where she was going, who could risk everything they'd built for a few hours of feeling desired. That woman didn't deserve a second chance. That woman was me, and that's the moment I understood what I'd really lost. Not just my marriage or my family or my home. I'd lost the right to think of as a good person. 6 months later, I'm writing this from a studio apartment across town that smells like other people's cooking and has thin walls that let me hear every argument, every late-night TV show, every reminder that I'm alone. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks ago. David got primary custody. I get the girls every other weekend and one dinner a week, supervised by a court mediator for the first month because David's lawyer convinced the judge that my moral fitness was questionable. Supervised visitation. Like I was a danger to my own children. But maybe I was. Maybe someone who could destroy their family so carelessly couldn't be trusted with anything precious. The girls adapted faster than I thought they would. Kids are resilient, everyone said. They bounce back. What they didn't tell me was that sometimes they bounce back to a version of normal that doesn't include Emma, my chatterbox who used to tell me every detail of her day, now gives one-word answers when I ask how school was. Sophie, who used to crawl into my lap every night for stories, sits on the opposite end of the couch during our court-mandated dinners. They're polite to me now. Polite in the way our with distant relatives or teachers don't particularly like. They save their real smiles, their genuine excitement, their secrets for David, and I understand why. Last month, Emma's class had a family tree project. She drew David at the center, surrounded by his parents, his sister, even our old dog Max who died 2 years ago. I was tucked into a corner, barely visible like an afterthought. When I asked about it during our dinner that week, she shrugged. Mrs. Peterson said to draw the people who are most important to our family. Daddy takes care of us all the time now. 6 years old, heard, and she already understood that I'd chosen to become optional in her. The worst part isn't the loneliness, though the silence in this apartment is deafening. It's not even the financial struggle. On part-time income while paying child support and rent is brutal. It's the shame that follows me everywhere. Our town isn't that big. People know. At the grocery store, former neighbors cross aisles to avoid me. At Emma's school pickup, other moms form tight circles that close when I approach. The woman at the dry cleaner who used to chat about her grandkids, now processes my clothes in cold silence. I've become a cautionary tale whispered in coffee shops and book clubs. The woman who had everything and it away for nothing. Because that's what Marcus turned out to be, nothing. He disappeared the moment things got complicated. No dramatic goodbye, no explanation. Just radio silence when I needed someone to remind me why I'd risked everything. 3 days after David found the texts, Marcus blocked my number and deleted his social media accounts. All those messages about how special I was, how he couldn't stop thinking about me, how I deserved better than my husband gone. Like they never existed. Like I never existed. Turns out what I'd mistaken for deep connection was just the thrill of something forbidden. When the secret was exposed and the consequences got real, there was nothing underneath. No foundation, no genuine caring, no substance worth the destruction it caused. I'd traded 7 years of real love for 6 weeks of fantasy. The therapy helps, I guess. Mandated counseling to work on my impulse control and decision-making patterns. Dr. Martinez is kind but unflinchingly honest. Keep talking about what lost, she said last week. But what did gain from the affair that felt was missing in marriage? I'd been expecting that question for months, had practiced answers about feeling appreciated and desired and seen. But sitting in that sterile office, the truth came out differently. I gained permission to be selfish. I said, for 6 weeks I gotta be the most important person in someone's world. Not a wife who had to consider her husband's needs, not a mother who had to put her children first. Just me. Being the center of attention. And was that worth it? I looked out the window at the parking lot where David used to wait for me after my appointments, back when we were trying to save our marriage. Before I admitted to the 4th time I'd slept with Marcus. Before he realized the woman he'd married was gone. No, I whispered. Wasn't worth anything. The hardest conversation happened 2 months ago. Sophie, my quiet Sophie, crawled into my lap during one of our dinners and asked the question I'd been dreading. Mommy, why did leave us? Not why didn't Daddy get divorced? Or why don't live with us anymore? She understood with the painful clarity of a 6-year-old that I hadn't been left by David. I had left them. I made some very bad choices, baby, I told her. Smoothing her hair the way I used to every night before bed. Choices that Daddy and Emma. But why did choose to us? The innocence in that question broke something inside me that I don't think will ever heal. She wasn't asking why I had an affair or why I lied or why I destroyed our family. She was asking why I chose to her, and I had chosen it. Every text to Marcus was a choice to prioritize my own desires over her well-being. Every lie was a choice to protect my secret instead of her security. Every moment I spent planning my next escape was a moment I chose over the little girl who trusted me completely. I don't know, Sophie, I admitted. I was confused and selfish and I forgot how much I loved. But that's my fault, not yours, and Emma did nothing wrong. She nodded solemnly, then climbed down from my lap and went back to coloring. The conversation was over for her, but I sat there watching my daughter draw pictures of houses with stick figures that didn't include me, and I realized something devastating. I had become the villain in my children's story. Not the complicated antihero who made mistakes but ultimately redeemed herself. Not the flawed but loving mother who learned from her errors. Just the bad guy who people they loved and disappeared from their daily lives. Last week I ran into David at the pharmacy. We stood in line together, awkward and careful, like strangers who happened to know each other's deepest secrets. He looked good, tired but good. He'd lost weight, was dressing better. There was something different about him, something lighter despite everything. How are the girls? I asked, though I'd just seen them 2 days before. Good, he said. Emma made honor roll. Sophie joined the art club at school. Things I should have known. Things I would have known if I still lived in their house, still shared their daily victories and struggles. That's wonderful, I said and meant it. Even if it stung that their achievements happened and I was no longer part of. Sarah, he said as we reached the counter, his voice gentler than it had been in months. I want to know. I'm seeing someone. The pharmacist was counting out his prescription, and I stood there trying to process what he'd said. Someone. David was seeing someone. It's not serious yet, he continued. But the girls have met her, and they like her. I wanted to hear it from me. Her name is Jennifer. She's a kindergarten teacher at the girls' school. Divorced, no kids of her own, but Emma and Sophie adore her. She helps with homework and makes pancakes on Saturday mornings, and doesn't carry the weight of having destroyed their family for selfish reasons. She's everything I used to be, before I chose to become someone else. I drove home from that pharmacy and cried for 3 hours. Not just because David had moved on, though that more than I'd expected, but because I realized the girls were building a new normal that was better than what I'd given them. They were happier now. Lighter. Free from the tension of parents who'd grown distant, free from the lies I'd been telling, free from the mother who'd been planning her escape instead of cherishing what she had. I'd thought I was the victim in this story. The woman whose husband didn't appreciate her, whose had become routine and thankless, who deserved more attention and excitement and passion. But sitting in my empty apartment, looking at the divorce papers that made everything official, I understood the truth. I wasn't the victim, I was the disaster. I was the tornado that ripped through a happy home and scattered the pieces. I was the earthquake that cracked the foundation of everything stable and safe. I was the wildfire that consumed years of trust and love and left nothing but ash. The girls are better off without me in their daily lives. David is free to find someone who won't betray him. Marcus got to walk away clean while I faced the consequences alone. Everyone moved on except me. I'm 33 years old, living in a studio apartment, working a job that barely pays the bills, seeing my children 4 days a month if I'm lucky. I spend evenings scrolling through social media, watching other people's families do the things I used to do with mine. Yesterday, I saw a picture of Emma and Sophie at the zoo with David and Jennifer. They were all wearing matching shirts from the gift shop, grinning at the camera like a real family. Emma was holding Jennifer's hand. My replacement is better at being their mother than I ever was. I keep thinking about that moment in Target parking lot, sitting in my car with Christmas presents in the trunk, sending that text that destroyed everything. If I could go back, if I could change that one moment. But that's the thing about choices. Don't get to unmake them, only get to live with the consequences, and mine follow me everywhere. People ask if I regret it. The affair, the lies, the choices that cost me everything. Of course I do. But regret is useless now. Hurt, like being sorry, burned down house while are standing in the ashes. What I really regret is who I became in those 6 weeks. Someone who could look at her sleeping children and choose to risk their happiness for a few stolen hours. Someone who could lie to a man who'd never lied to her. Someone who could mistake attention for love and excitement for meaning. I regret becoming someone I don't recognize, someone I can't respect, someone I wouldn't want my daughters to grow to be. The affairs end, but the person who was capable of having them remains. I have to live with her every day in every mirror, knowing that when it mattered most, when my family needed me to be faithful and honest and strong, I chose to be none of those things. So here I am, writing this story that no one will read, in an apartment that doesn't feel like home, trying to figure out how to build a from the wreckage of the one I destroyed. They say can't miss what never had, but they're wrong. Can spend forever missing the way for absolutely nothing.